Hello everyone, my name is Dean and welcome back to the 20 and 20 challenge. This is week 6, part 3. This is sort of the finale, and today we're going to be covering quite a few things. I'm going to try and list them off and then we'll get right into the code. So we're going to be creating the ability to upvote using the Axe as votable gem. We're going to be adding rich text to the game reviews. We're going to make it so if you're looking at a specific genre of games and you click onto a game, when you go back to that genre and in that order. So we're going to be doing some kind of persistent parameters. We're going to be adding admin functionality. We're going to be cleaning up the forms for the genres. We're going to make all of that so that only admins can go there. We'll also be adding in user accounts. We'll add in Bootstrap, JQuery, and Popper. We'll also make it so that you can feature some of the genres in your navbar by going to the genres page. You can go there, edit it, and you can just say I want to feature RPG and RTS, and that'll be a link in the navbar then. And we're also going to be cleaning up some of the other stuff that we've done. So that's kind of the overview of what we're doing today. There's a lot to get to, so let's just go ahead and let's jump into some code. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing today is adding in Bootstrap into our application. So we're going to be using yarn for this. So we'll type yarn, add Bootstrap, JQuery, and Popper.js. And the reason we're doing this is we're going to be using jQuery a little bit later, so I thought we might as well just add in Bootstrap and get all of this out of the way, because the second half we're going to be using Bootstrap anyways. So I thought this might, save us some time. So while that's installing, we can come over to our config, Webpack, and environment.js. And between these two lines, we need to add in the Webpack require statement. So we're going to start with a const Webpack equals require Webpack. And if you don't know what I'm doing, I've covered this in another tutorial. And I'll link to that in one of the cards in the top right up here so that you can follow along with that in case you're a little bit lost. But mostly it's just copying and pasting what other people have found out to do, or going off of what the person who made this told people to do. So we're going to be providing a plugin to Webpack here for our jQuery, which we're going to assign the $sign to jQuery. That's lowercase jQuery. Then we're going to have J_Q query is jQuery, and then we're going to have capital P Popper is equal to this little array here of Popper.js, and I believe the last one is default. So that covers setting up our environment.js. The next thing we have to do is come into our app, JavaScript packs application.js, and just below this stuff we need to do two things. We need to import Bootstrap and import a file we haven't made yet, so we're going to say ./stylesheets/application.scss. And then above this, we'll just do a global $sign equals J_Q query, and that's just because we're going to be using jQuery inside of a .erb file, so we're going to need global access to it, and this is just an easy, free way to do that. The next thing we can do is come into our packs, create a new folder, call this style sheets, so that we conform to this style sheets we just made right here, and then we'll make a new file in here called application.scss. And in here, we're going to do an @import for ~bootstrap/scss/bootstrap. Bootstrap. And the second thing we can do is we can @import stylesheets/app.scss. And what we're doing here is we are going to be importing our app assets style sheets application.css. We're just going to be renaming this to app.scss so that it's easier to distinguish between the two. So if we come in here, we're no longer doing this require tree and require self. We're just going to @import the stuff we need. So here I'm going to @import the games.scss, and I'll also @import the genres.scss, but we probably won't be using this, so that might change. So we can save this, and now there's two other things we have to do. The first one is come into our layouts, so our views, layouts, application.html.erb, and we're going to get rid of this style sheet link tag because we're doing, okay, sorry, the neighbors just let their dogs out, so I had to close the window. We're getting rid of the application style sheet tag here because we're doing everything through Webpack now, so we don't need that. And the other thing we do need to do is we need to come into our config folder and our webpacker.yaml file. And for our resolved paths right here, we need to add in app/assets. And I think by doing all of that, if I now run a Rails S command, hopefully this won't throw any errors in our console here. So let's wait for this to load up and then I'll refresh the page. Okay, so we're not getting any errors in our console and it looks like this is properly styled. So let's go ahead and let's test whether this application import right here is working. So inside of our style sheets, we'll create a new file and we'll call this test.scss. And in here, I'm just going to grab every single A tag and I'm going to give them all a background color of black. And inside of our app.scss, I'm just going to import this test.scss. And if this works, all of these links should have a black background added to them. Okay, so it looks like that worked. So we can get rid of this and we can delete this test.scss file. I just wanted to make sure that everything was set up the way we expect it to be. So now if I refresh, this black background should go away again. So we'll just close out of all of this because we are done with this portion of the setup. And the next thing that we have to do is add in Devise. So if we come into our gem file, we'll come down to below the image processing gem and we'll just add in a gem. As soon as my computer catches up, a gem for Devise and a gem for simple_form. So I'll save that. And then I'll stop the server and run a bundle install command. And then once this is done, I'm going to do a spring stop because this has been a bit of an issue today. And I'll do a Rails G Devise :install command to install Devise. We can now do a Rails G Devise user with an admin :boolean command to generate a user model with an admin boolean. And then if we come into our DB migrate folder, and the bottom migration here should be the Devise one. And you can see here below the lockable, it added in that boolean. And we'll just set this with a default value of false, just so that we are explicit. And then we can run a Rails DB :migrate command to migrate the database. Once this is done, we'll then run the simple form installer just to make our Devise forms look a little bit better. So we'll say Rails G, let me just full screen this because I'm having trouble seeing it now. Rails G simple_form :install, and then it's -- bootstrap, I think. And that should run the bootstrap version of the simple form installer. So now that that's done, we should be able to start our server again, and hopefully we can see some of these changes on the server. So if I refresh the page, we'll want to go to /users/sign-up. Okay, it looks like I just had to restart the server to make that work. So let's start by creating a dean@example.com account. This will just be our admin account for now. We'll hit sign up. And now let's grab a navbar off of the Bootstrap website. So normally what I do is I go to Google and I look for Bootstrap 4 components or Bootstrap 4 documentation, and I click on the Bootstrap 4 documents, not the Bootstrap 3 stuff. And then in here I just search for whatever I'm looking for. So in this case I'm looking for a navbar. So I click that, I scroll down, and I just grab the first one that I see because I'm probably going to be customizing it anyways. And you can see that my computer is having a bit of an issue right now, so we're just going to do this. Let's now come into our app views layouts, and we'll create a new file, _navbar.html.erb. And in here we'll just paste in all of this, and we'll just start configuring this. So if I come into application.html.erb, we'll just render this navbar real quick. So we'll say render layout/navbar. And if we refresh the page, that navbar should appear. So the first thing we'll do is we'll get rid of this search form. We'll then also grab this UL right here because we do need a UL of our own over there. So I'll just go ahead and close this. And we're going to get rid of this margin right, and we're going to replace it with a margin left. And in here, we'll add in a LI for our drop down. So we're actually going to grab this entire drop down right here, and we'll just paste it in right here. So now that we have this drop down, if I save this and refresh, we have this drop down over here. You can see it's off the screen a bit. So it's like forcing the screen to resize, and we can fix that real fast by going to this drop down menu and adding in a drop down menu -right. So if I save that and refresh, and now if I click on this, it opens as we expect it to. For this drop down word right here, we're just going to replace this with the current _user.username, which is something we'll create right now. And we're also going to do a check here to see if the current _user, then we're going to create this drop down. Otherwise, so below this li, but above the ul, we'll create an else block. So if there is no current user, then that means we need to prompt them to sign in. So we'll create an li. And inside of this li, we'll just create a link. So we'll say link to sign up, new user registration path. And this has a class of, I think it's nav-link. And I think this li is going to have a class equal to nav-item. So I'll just save that. And hopefully this, yeah, we don't have the username method. So let's come into models, user.rb. And we'll just say def username end. And then we'll tab this over. And inside of this, we'll tab this over. Inside of this, we're just going to return the email.split at the @ symbol. We'll grab the 0th element and we'll call capitalize on it. So my usual shtick here, I've covered this in my Devise username tutorial, but you grab the email, which in this case is equal to dean@example.com, and you call split on it, which splits it into both Dean and example.com. So by grabbing the 0th element, you're grabbing Dean, and then you're calling .capitalize on it, which gives you capital D Dean. So that's all we're doing here. It's not a real username you can log in with, but for the sake of prototyping an application like this, it works. Although I do have a video that covers how to create a real username you can log in with, and you can click on the card to go look at that one right now. But we'll now go ahead and refresh the page. Okay, and we've now refreshed the page, and you can see here our fake username. So now let's add in a couple more options here. So below this sign up, we're also going to create a link to a sign in page, which is going to be the new user session path. And this will also need a class of nav-link. But this needs to be outside of this li. So we're going to create another li with a class equal to nav-item. And then right below this sign in link, we'll close this li. So that handles both of these links right here. The other thing we need to do is inside of this dropdown add some meaningful stuff. So we'll say if you're signed in, this right here should be the log out button. So create a link to log out. This is going to be the destroy user session path link with a method : delete and a class of drop-down-item. I think that's what we need. So if I refresh, we now have this log out button, which logs us out and prompts us to sign up or sign in. So I'll sign in. That info looks right to me, and then this is working. Okay. So now the top link will say, if you're signed in, you probably want to be able to edit your user account settings. So we'll say link to the account settings. This will be the edit _user registration path link with a class of drop-down-item. And then we'll do some links in here for if you're an admin and you're signed in. So let me just refresh because I'm not an admin right now, so this is all I'll see. Let's now create our admin account. So we'll type Rails C to open up the Rails console. And in here, we'll just grab the user.first, which is this dean@example.com user. And then we'll say .update, and we want to update the admin to be true. You can see here we updated this user, so now if I do user.first.admin, that should return true. And we're done here, so we can hit Control and D to exit, and then Rails S to start the server again. So now we have one admin account. That's great. What do we want an admin to be able to do? Well, I guess the first thing an admin should be able to do is they should be able to, and let me full screen this, they should be able to create a new game. So we'll say link to new game review. And this is, I think, the new game path with a class of dropdown - item. And then here we'll just say, because we already know if the current user is logged in, so we can just do a if current _ user.admin, then we want to do these things. So we have the new game review. We also need to link to the new genre, which is just going to be the new genre path. Although now that I'm thinking about it, maybe we just want to say this is manage genres, and then we'll just link to the genres path with a class of dropdown - items. Let me save that and we'll see how that looks. So let me refresh. We'll come over here to our dropdown. So new account or new game review, which takes us here. That's good. And manage genres, that takes us here. That also looks good. So if we edit this, yeah, so it just has the name right now. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is to clean up this navbar a little bit. Well, a little bit more than we have been doing. So let's come up to here, and for the home, we'll say this is our game review. And the link is going to be, let's actually switch this to a Rails link. So navbar brand is the class we need. So link to game reviews. And this is going to be the root path, and the class is going to be navbar - brand. This home link is fine, but it doesn't need a current span. So we'll get rid of this and we'll replace this with a link to home, which is going to be the root path and a class of nav - link. So we can do that, and then we can get rid of all of these. And that should work. Yes, now we have game reviews and home, and both of these take us to the home page. So what do we want to do now? What I would like to do now is make it so we can feature some of our genres in the navbar. So maybe we really want to show like RPG and adventure games, but we don't want to show action and sandbox. So let's go ahead and let's handle that. We can't do this inside of our game controller, because if we go somewhere like our edit account settings page, we're no longer on the game controller, and then if it tries to render those in the navbar, it's not going to exist. So we need this to be like an application-wide collection. So for that, we're going to come into our controllers, games controller. I lied. We're going to come into our controllers application controller, and in here we're going to do something like def set genres or set featured. And then for our featured, we're going to say genre.where featured in navbar is true. And we're going to order these by name in ascending. So they're going to be ordered alphabetically. So grab genres where featured is set to true and show them alphabetically. That's basically what we're doing here, but we do need to actually create this featured in navbar thing. So we'll stop the server and we'll say Rails G, and let me full screen this so you can see this. Rails G migration, add featured to genres, and then we'll say feature in navbar is a Boolean, which should be false by default. And we can run a Rails DB :migrate command to migrate the database. And then once that's done, we can run a Rails S command to restart the server. Okay, so now that the server's restarted, let's come over to our genres index page. And in here, we're going to change a couple things around. So we're basically just going to get rid of everything in here. So we'll delete all that, save it, and then the page should be blank. So we're going to start with a div in a class of container. And we're going to give this a h1, and this is going to have a style equal to text align center, and you could give this a custom class if you wanted to, but we're just going to do it like this. So we're going to say link to genres, and this is going to be the root path once this is done, and then we can close this h1. And then once all of that's done, we can then say at genres.each do genre. And then down here we'll say end. So in here we'll grab another container. Container. And then inside this container we'll create a div with a class equal to row. And then in here we'll do a form with the model set to genre and the local set to true. Do form. And then in here we'll create a div with a class equal to column. A div with a class equal to form hyphen group and a class of row. And then in that we'll do another div with a class equal to column. And in here we'll do a form.text underscore field for the genre name and a class of form hyphen control. So we'll save that, and then let's come down to the bottom of this and we'll just say %end right there for right now. So if I refresh the page, hopefully this works. So now we have all of our genres listed here in a form format. So now below this column, we're going to create another div with a class equal to column hyphen form hyphen label. Label, there we go. And this is going to be our form.label feature with a class of column hyphen form hyphen label. There we go. And now below this we can create another column, and this is going to be a form.check underscore box for the feature in navbar and the class of form hyphen control. So let's save that. Okay. So now that we have that, the last thing we'll need is a submit button. So we'll say another div with a class equal to column, and in here we'll just do a form.submit, and we'll call this update. So now if I do this, I should be able to feature RPG, and it'll take us to the individual show page. So let's come into our app controller's genres controller, and then we'll come to the update action, which it automatically took me to. And instead of redirecting to the genre, let's just redirect to the genres path. Okay, so now if I come to the genres path and I hit featured and I hit update, you'll see it gets rid of this feature. And the reason is down here in the genre params, we need to still permit this feature in navbar inside of our parameters. So once we whitelist that parameter, it should handle updating appropriately. So let me refresh again. I'll hit feature on RPG, I'll hit update, and you can now see it is still set to featured. So now we can come back to our index page, and below the end tag right here for the form, we want to do another column. So we'll say .col, and we'll tab this over. And in here we just want to do a link to destroy for the genre with the method of delete, a data of confirm. Are you sure you want to delete the entire genre? And then after that we'll do a comma and we'll say class, and I'll full screen this so you guys can see this full thing, a class of button hyphen danger. I think that's going to create the button that I'm looking for, so now let me refresh. And now I should be able to delete a genre at will. So now in our navbar, let's come into navbar, and inside of our admin functionality, maybe below the new game, but above genres, we'll say link to a new genre. And this is going to be the new genre path with a class of drop down hyphen item. So I'll save that, and I'll also space this over so it looks better. So now let me refresh. So if I come in here, new genre, and we need to add in our checkbox to this form. So let me come over to the index page. This is the checkbox for the feature. This is the checkbox for the feature, sorry. So I'm just going to copy this, come over to our genres form, and we'll create another field. And then in here we'll just say, let me full screen this again. We need a form.label for the feature in navbar. And we have our form.checkbox for the feature in navbar with a class of form control as well. So hopefully that doesn't break everything. It sort of did. So let's get rid of this class for form control because we really don't need it on this page. We're not trying to style everything in the application. There we go. So we can say something like maybe we have action adventure. Let's create one for like RTS. And maybe we want to feature RTS in the navbar. So now if we come back to our page here, you can see that RPG and RPS are featured. Let's maybe also feature action or adventure, something like that. So that gives us 3 to work with. So now let's come to our application controller. And we have this genre.where. So let's set this equal to @featured. And now we can grab this @featured here inside of our navbar. So once this saves, we'll come over to our navbar and we'll just say after the home link, something like @featured.each do genre, and then we'll say end. And then for each of these, we'll create an li with the class equal to nav-item. We'll close the li, and then we'll say we need a link. We need a link to the genre.name. We're going to link to the root path with the genre set to genre.name. And then we're going to need a class of nav-link. I think that's correct. So we'll come in here, we'll refresh, and we'll get an error. @featured.each do. No such column featured in navbar. So I think the issue here is that this should be feature in navbar to match what our migration was. Because if I come in here and I say genre.new, and I pump this up a little bit, genre.new, yeah, this is feature in navbar, and I had featured in the application controller. So now if I set this back to a reasonable size, let me reset everything, and I refresh, I should be able to zoom in and say, well, because it's Bootstrap, I'll have to zoom out a bit. It looks like I also have an equal sign in our navbar, so instead of saying equals, we need to just say open angle bracket % @featured. So if I save that, the navbar now looks good, and if I click on adventure, it should take us to the adventure games, or the RPG games, or the RTS games, which don't exist right now. But I can also just click here to go to all. So maybe we also want a link for all games, so let's do that. So well, I guess that's the home page, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, we already have that. So the next thing I'd like to do is stop users who are not signed in or not signed into an admin account from being able to go to like /genres or to /games/new because they really shouldn't have that capability. So let's come into our application controller and we'll create another method in here. We're going to call this one a helper method, and we're going to say is_admin ! And then down here we'll say def is admin ! And then we're going to say if, or I guess we're going to say unless current _user and .admin. So unless that's true, redirect to the root path. So if both of these conditions are met, we're not going to do anything, but if they're not met, it's going to send you back to the root path. And if I refresh right now, nothing's going to happen, of course, because we haven't called this anywhere. But we're going to come into our genres controller, and basically for every action in here, we're just going to say before action is admin. So if I save that, and I try to go to /genres, for example, it's going to redirect me to the root path. So I no longer have an ability to go to like /genres/new. If I sign into, let's sign into an admin account and I try to go to /genres/new, that'll still work. But if let's say I sign up for a new account, we'll say test@case.com with a password of password. And now if I try to go to /genre/new, it'll redirect me to the root path. And you can see here, we only have account settings and logout in our dropdown. So that's all working how we would expect it to. So let me log back into the admin account. So the other thing we need to do is come into our games controller, and we're going to say before action is admin, except for the index action and the show action. So that way they can't go to /games/new or /games/edit or whatever. The only thing they can do is go to like this home page or an individual games show page. And that's all that you'll see there. So that's good. We've also handled that. Now the last thing I'd like to cover is using the Axe as votable gem. So for this one, I have 2 pages open here. I have this GitHub page for the Axe as votable gem, and I have this github.io blog post, which I'm going to be referencing. But I'm going to go ahead and close all of these things for now so that we don't have as much noise in the way. And we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing we have to do is come into our gem file, and we'll add in a gem for the Axe as votable gem. I'll save this, and then I'll stop the server. And I'll run a bundle install command. And then we can just go down here, and then it says to run this Rails G Axe as votable : migration command. And I'll just zoom in so you guys can see what I'm reading. So we just ran this Axe as votable migration. Now we need to run a Rails DB : migrate command. Now we'll have to go into here. They're giving the example of an article. We don't have articles, we have games. So let's come into app, models, game. And this is going to act as votable. And I think, yeah, the user model needs to act as a voter. So let's come in here and we'll say for this one, it's going to act as voter. You can save that. I'll also start the server while we're doing this. Now we need to add in this ability to like a game. So I just need to open this up real quick because I did this a little bit differently. So if we come into our controllers and our games controller, and I'll scroll down to below the destroy, we need a def for the like action. And for this, we'll say if current _user dot voted _for ? At game. So if the current user has already liked this, then at game dot unliked by current user. Else they haven't liked it, so let's make them like it. So we'll say at game dot liked by current user. I really wish it was this easy to make people like things in real life, where you could just call a command like that and then say, okay, you like this thing now. So now that that's done, all we have to do is say before action authenticate user only for the like, because we're already handling everything else with this is admin. So this should be good like that. And for our resources games, we're going to say do end, and then in here we need a member do block end. And we're just going to put a like to the games controller like action. And that'll handle setting that like system up. So now they want a template for the like action. So this is the Ajax portion. So we're going to come into our application, views, games, and we need to create a new file. And we're going to call this like.js.erb. And then here, this is where we're using the jQuery that we set up earlier. We're going to start with a like counter. And we're going to set the HTML for this to be a JRender for the games like partial, which we haven't created yet. And we're just going to pass in this game collection. And once that's done, we can close that off. We also need one in here. Let me just full screen this for another partial, which we're going to call the like link. And we're going to say .html for this as well. I'll just close this off. This also needs to be a JRender for the game/like link. And we also need to pass in the game at game. And now we can close off the Ruby code, and I think we're done inside of this like.js.erb file. So let's create both of these partials real quick. So in our games folder, we're going to create a new file called _like.html.erb. Let's actually call this likes because it's plural. So let me just do that, and let me change it in here to likes. And this is just going to be a pluralize for the game.get _upvotes, I think, .size, comma, like. I think that's what it's supposed to look like. Now let's create another partial, and we'll call this one _like_link.html.erb. I think that's what we called it, right? Like link, yes. Okay. And for this one, we just need, we'll need to set a vote text equal to current _user and .voted _for ? Game. So if the current user voted for this game already, then we want the text to say unlike. Otherwise, we want it to say like. And now that we have that, we can add this into our link. So we'll say link to the vote text, which is just either saying unlike or like in the string. And then for the path, we need the like _game _path, and we need to pass in the game with a method of put, a remote of true, and a class of like post. And if we did all of that, we now need to come into our game show page, and we need to clean this up. So let's just get rid of everything in here. And let's start with a div and a class of container. Then we need a class of row. Then we need a class of column-4. Now in here, we'll create an image _tag for the @game.thumbnail with a class of image fluid. If @game.thumbnail.attached. Then we can end that. Now we need a div with a class equal to row. And in here we need a column-12, which is going to be an h4. And I'll close off this h4. And this is just going to be a square brackets. And inside of this, we'll add in the @game.rating. And then we'll say out of 10. So that takes care of that. Let's come out of this column 12 and let's create another column 12. You could also probably use rows for this. This is just something I threw together fairly quickly. But we're going to create an h5 in here, and we're going to give this an ID of like-count. Is that what we called it? Let's come into our like.js. Yes, so like count and like link are the two. So this is our like count right here. So we already know we need to render this partial. So say render games/likes. And then we need to pass in the @game. And then below this, we'll create another div with an ID equal to like link. And in here, we need to render the games/like link. And then we need to pass in the game @game. Now below this, let's create an HR just for a little bit of styling. And then below the h5, we have one div, two divs closed, and then here we're going to create a div with a class of row, a div with a class of column-12, and in here we'll say h6, and then in here we want to say this game belongs to, and then like @game.genres.count, and I guess we can pluralize this, so we'll say pluralize the @games.genres.count, and we'll say genre, close off this, six genres for example. Then we'll come down below this, and we'll create another div with a class equal to column-6. And then here we'll say link to the genre.name with the root path genre:genre.name. And now what we can do is we can add a @game.genres.each do genre, and we can end it right here. And then below this, we'll create another div with a class of column-12. And in here we can say if current_user and .admin, and then we'll end it right here. So if the current user is an admin, then we want to link to the edit page, which is going to be the edit_game_path for the @game with a class of button warning. And let's actually wrap this in a class of, I think it's btn-group. Does that work? Let's add in a link to the delete for the @game with a method of delete and a class of button danger. Out of this will come down, I think it's 1, 2, 3 divs, and then we'll create another div with a class of column-8. And in here we'll create an h1, close off the h1, and we'll say if params for the genre is nil, then we want to link to the @game.title for the root path. So if there are no params, link to the root path just as is. Else, we came to this link with a parameter in the URL. So let's link to the @game.title, but let's go to the root path and pass in the parameters again. And what this allows us to do is if we come to this page off of like searching from the RPGs page, and if we click on the title again, and I know I haven't run this in a while, so we'll probably run into a whole bunch of fun errors when I click on this, but if I go to like this Minecraft page, and that actually worked, I'm shocked. But if we like go back now, so now in theory, if we come to our home page with something that is like a parameter for one of these games, so let's come into our index page, and so this is in our game/genres, so let's go to /genres. Now when we do this link to the game, let's change this to include the genre, which is the I think it's @genre_name, and let's also do a or let's say order is @order. So we do need to create this @order. So let's come into our games controller, and right here in the set games and genre with criteria, before the order games, we're going to say @order equals requested order, which will allow us to access it down there. And once we've done that, we can then come into our search.js.erb file. And we're going to want to say something like window.history.replace state, and then we'll pass in null, and the last one's going to be a string, and we'll say $genre equals @genre_name inside Ruby code, and then we'll have a $order equals, and this is going to be @order inside some Ruby code, and then we can close these quotes, close the parentheses, and add a semicolon. And if we do that and that works like we expect it to, we should now be able to refresh the page and run into an error, which is, we can't just say game there. We need to come into our index page, and instead of linking, our genres partial, and instead of linking to game, we need to say like game path. We do also need to pass in the game. So game path @game, or just, so game path, then we need to say game is game, genre. Oh, I see. So in here we need to just say this is the game object. If I refresh this page, this should now work. So we have our games2, genre equals all, order equals whatever. So let's come to sandbox as our genre. So now it's only Minecraft here. If I click on this, we're in the games, and we have sandbox as our genre, and if I click on this, we go back to sandbox. So let's say I say let's look for RPG, and we want to order this by oldest first. So I'll click on this Skyrim here, and then when we come back, we expect this to be Skyrim and then RuneScape. Okay, but it's only showing us the genre here. So that means in our show page, we're passing in the genre param, but we're not passing in the order param. So we'll say params, order is params order. Sorry about that. Neighbor's dog was barking again. So here we're just saying if the params genre is nil, do this. Otherwise, we're going to handle it like this. So if the order params are nil, I don't actually think this will error out. So if I just switch to, let's do RPG from A to Z, I'll click on RuneScape, order is A to Z, that takes us back. Now if order is blank, so here order is just question mark, and then I click on Minecraft, order is still blank, and it just takes us back. And then if I go to like the home page and I click on RPG, oldest first, and then I click on Skyrim, so oldest plus first. We also need to switch this from the empty parameter up here in the index to be the order parameter. That's where our issue is when we do this. So if I now come to this, the parameters should be fixed. So if I click on RuneScape here and then I go back, RuneScape is still second, Skyrim should still be first. So if I sort by all and I say lowest rating first, and I click on RuneScape, I should go back here and it's still set like that. So that all seems to be working. I think this one right here would probably break it. So let's actually come in here and test this delete button. So that managed to delete that one. Okay, so now we only have the working games. So I think that's about it for what I wanted to cover, but let me just do one quick sweep through here to make sure everything works. So let's come over to our page here, and I'll scroll into 150%, and I'll say, let's click on this Minecraft one, and I really like this review, so I'll click like, and we're getting an internal server error here. So what's the problem? Undefined method ID for nil class. So if we come into our games controller, I bet I don't have the parameter set up. Yeah, so right up here in our before action in our games controller, we need to add in the like action so that we can set the game. It's because down here we're calling @game, but we weren't setting it. So now if I refresh the page and I click like, you can see right here it changed it in the database. So now we've liked this, and now we can unlike it. And if I like this and I copy this, I'll open up an incognito window and I'll come here. You can see it has one like, but this link is visible if I'm logged out. So we probably want to make sure that's only visible if you're logged in. So let's come into our show page, and let's actually come into the like link, and let's just wrap all of this in a if current user. Then we want to be able to like it. You could also do something like if the current user is, or if there is no current user, then the like link will redirect to like the new user session path. So you could say something like else. You could say something like else link to like, and this is going to be the new user session path with a method with a class of like posts, so it's similar to the other one. So if I do this and I refresh, and now if I come into the Minecraft page and I click on this, it's going to redirect me to the login page, because you can't actually like it when you're logged in because the controller would redirect you. But this way you don't even try to link there. You're just immediately linking to the login page. So let me log into that test@case.com account that we created earlier, and then I'll go to Minecraft and I'll like this. Let's come into our games controller. I wonder if we're doing is admin. We need to add an exception here for the like action, I bet, because you want to be able to like something even if you're not an admin. So now if we come into here and we click like, this is no longer redirecting us. Okay, so there we go. That's basically everything I think I wanted to cover here. If I try to go to /genres, it'll redirect me. If I try to go to /games/new/new, it'll redirect me. I don't have those options in my drop down, I think, right? So let's add some rich text and then let's call it a day, I guess. So let me just minimize this and we'll drag this over. So for rich text, we're going to be using action text real quick. So I'll just say Rails G action _ text : install. I think that's the command. Maybe it's just Rails action _ text : install. Okay, let's run a Rails db : migrate command to migrate the database. And then while that's running, let's come into our app, assets, style sheets, app.scss, and let's import this action text file right here. So say at import action text.scss. Let's then come into our game.rb, and this needs to now have has rich text for the, I think we called them the reviews. If I come into my games controller, I should be able to see that down here in the parameters. Just review. So let's come back to the game.rb. This needs to just be review. And then we can come into our games form.html, and instead of the text area, this needs to be a rich text area. We can save that. And then let's come into our show page, and then below the title here, inside of this div, let's just create another div with a class of container. And in here we'll just say this needs to be the @game.review. So now if I do that and I start the server and I refresh the page, and if I check the app JavaScripts folder real quick, JavaScript packs application.js, yeah, it automatically added in the trick stuff that we needed. So that's good. That means that's working. And once this finishes compiling, we can full screen this and just make sure that this is working as we expect it to. So it's full screen, and let's go to a new game review. And we can see here we do have this. So let's create one new game review. So let's say, let's create one for Dark Souls. Easy mode was way too hard, but it's a lot like Dark Souls. So that's neat. More words here, I guess. And we'll bold this. And let me just find a couple images. Okay, so I'll grab this. I'll drag over the thumbnail. And then let me just, I don't know, try to drag in one more image. So let's drag this in. Cool. And we'll add in a caption that says, "This game's pretty neat, man." All right, so that's good. We'll just strike through something here just to make sure all of this works. So that all looks good. Let's create this game. Okay, so here you can see we now have our thumbnail. It has a rating of 10. I'll just like this real quick. We have the body here that has the rich text, and it also has the genre, so this is an action game. And if I go to all games, we can now see that all games are listed here. And I think that's going to do it for this episode, because we are already 2 recordings in. I think this was part 1 right here, and I think this one's part 2. So we got about an hour and 15 minutes to edit through right now. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and cut to the outro. Okay, so that's going to do it for this week's project. I hope you guys learned something doing this. I sure did. I haven't really played with the Axis Votable gem since like Rails 4. And I didn't really know what I was doing back then, so, you know, I've come a long way, and it was a lot easier to do this time now that I know what I'm doing. But if this video helped you, please remember to like it. If this video didn't help you, remember to dislike it so we don't subject other people to more bad tutorials. And join me next week where we do whatever I decide to do. I have an interview on Wednesday that I have to take care of. I also have a freelance project that I'm working on, so I might be a little bit busy. I'm not sure when the video will be out, but you guys will be the first to know, of course. So, you know, consider subscribing if you want to see more of these. We have another 14 weeks of these projects to go. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.